to the Liberty Podcast with Clint Armitage. We are proclaiming liberty one show at a time, and the next one starts right now. How's it going, everybody? Clint Armitage with the Liberty Podcast. This is a part 2 of a 2-part series entitled, Are You Ready to Die? Now, part 1, we talked about Rocio Pino, who was a female who sacrificed herself knowing that she could possibly die at the hands of the guerrillas, the guerrilla fighters in Colombia. Well, today we've got a different story, and again, it's from Voice of the Martyrs. And I also did some other online research and some other studying to find out more about this martyr or this believer that sacrificed himself for the gospel. And this one has some controversy to it. So I'll get into it in just a little bit, but I want to play Voice of the Martyr audio quotes. It's actually audio quotes from his actual journal. All right, so let's listen to that, and then I'll tell you more about him.
God, I don't want to die. Who will take my place if I do? Once I said yes to Jesus, I was committed. I was all in. I believe that the measure of success in the kingdom of God is obedience. I want my life to reflect obedience to Christ and to live in obedience to Him. I think that Jesus is worth it. He's worth everything. You guys might think I'm crazy in all this, but I think it's worth it to declare Jesus to these people. Please do not be angry at them or at God if I get killed. Rather, please live your lives in obedience to whatever He has called you to, and I'll see you again when you pass through the veil. The eternal lives of this tribe is at hand, and I can't wait to see them around the throne of God, worshiping in their own language as Revelation 7:9-10 states. I pray none of you love anything in this world more than Jesus Christ.
Okay, so that was the actual journal writings turned into audio of a guy by the name of John Chau, C-H-A-U, John Allen Chau. Now, the thing about this guy, and again, I got this from, I was researching or looking up Voice of the Martyrs, and this is one of the stories that popped up on their YouVersion, devotional. And I researched more because as I was listening to their devotional, the audio portion, and I read the written portion of their take on John Chau and what he did, well, it seemed to me there was something missing. And normally when there's something missing, either something's hidden or something doesn't want to be brought up or talked about or whatever, or there's some controversy. Well, as I did some more research on this guy, yeah, there was some controversy surrounding his death. So again, his name is John Allen Chau, and he was 29 years old, I think. And when he died, 28, 29, somewhere around there, he died on November 17th, 2018. And he died attempting to witness to a tribe called the Sentinelese. And they're from the North Sentinel Island near India. And I guess this is one of the unreached tribes in the world. In the world, there's a bunch of unreached people. And so some missionaries focused on going to witness to the unreached, to the people that have not heard the gospel. So that's what happened. That's the situation here with John Chau. Now, the controversy is surrounding him actually going to these people to witness. And, he died fairly quickly upon making contact. I think he contacted them, on the second attempt or something like that. And then they ended up taking his life. And so, and I'll give you a little bit more details of the story in just a second, but the controversy surrounds this because a ton of people, and this is Christians and non-Christians, have criticized what he did. Okay, so the information that I have is that he went illegally. I guess you're supposed to get permission from India or whoever the governing agency or governing country is on these islands, and you're supposed to get permission or a permit or a license or something to go visit these islands, because again, this island has not been reached, and every time they attempt to make contact with the tribe called the Sentinelese, they are kind of violent and try to attack or confront anybody that attempts to contact them. So they just kind of leave them alone. The government leaves them alone. And so you need a license or a permit. You got to get permission to go to this island. And so the information that I kind of dug up so far is that he didn't have permission to go. Now, he did have backing from his missionary agency, which is called All Nations International. And they have missionary hubs in different parts of the world. But this guy, John Chau, was affiliated or was working in part with this missionary agency called All Nations International. Anyways, he had their backing. So he went with their backing to evangelize or contact this tribe or these people, the Sentinelese, on this island. And so the controversy, that's kind of what kicked off the controversy, was that he wasn't supposed to be there, or he didn't have permission to be there. And so again, Christians and non-Christians alike were totally we're criticizing him for doing this, and even though he died. And instead of honoring him and his death, they basically were criticizing him and his death. And of course, the non-Christians, I hope it's not Christians, but I noticed some memes that were out there. I was looking on Instagram, and there was memes, pretty callous memes about his death, and then also just harsh criticism, basically, saying stuff like "good riddance," that's what he deserves and that's what he gets, and I hope that wasn't Christians saying that, but then the other side, there were Christians that basically criticized the fact that, hey, maybe he shouldn't have gone and done that, or maybe he should have prepared better and all that. So again, I did more research into it and found a podcast where they interviewed the executive leader of the missionary agency, All Nations Incorporated. Her name is Mary Ho. I think it was Mary Ho. Anyways, she gave some insight into and some background into the information regarding things like his preparation and, was he foolish to do this? And that was kind of the question that was coming up. And so I took down some notes, I did more research and all that, and this is the information that I gathered from this. Okay, so again, her name is Mary Ho. She's the executive leader of the All Nations International Missionary Agency. And John Chau was a part of this missionary agency, and on behalf of this missionary agency, he went to the North Sentinel Island to evangelize, to make contact with this tribe who is literally unreached with the gospel. So she gives a little bit of background on John. So I'm going to go over the highlights and the points that I gathered from this interview. First of all, he was 17 years old. He was age 17 when he committed himself to Jesus. And right after that, he went to Mexico on a missions trip. And that supposedly totally changed his life. And he was all in for being a missionary now after that trip to Mexico. So he started, after he returned from Mexico, he started doing research about the unreached, the people that have never heard the gospel. And he found out about the Sentinelese from his research. And one of the websites, or one of the programs that he researched, was the Joshua Project. They do a lot of there's a lot of information in regards to the unreached. And, I even went on the website and checked it out. And, they said something like 42% of people in the world are unreached. I mean, wow. I was thinking, wow, that's a lot of people. That's almost half. I didn't realize it was that much, but 42%. And they give the stats, the actual stats, the billions of people that have been reached, and then the billions of people who've not been reached. And it it basically broke down to 42% of the people have not been reached in this world with the gospel. So I was surprised actually to hear that. But anyways, back to John Chau here, or John Chau. So he did his research, and that's where he was introduced to the Sentinelese, the people of North Sentinel Island. And he felt, she was saying that he felt he was called by God specifically to reach the unreached, and specifically the Sentinelese. And this was at age 18. And so I guess, and he did a video, and, he said stuff like, once he said yes to Jesus, he was committed, and you heard that in the quote there, and he was all in. Now, background on how much preparation he did in regards to being ready for this mission. And did he just kind of throw himself into it, and that's why that's why he got killed and all that? Well, a little bit more background here. She gives information that he spent, from the age 18, the next 9 years preparing for the mission. Okay, from 18 to 27, I guess. He was preparing for this specific mission of going to the North Sentinel Island, okay, for 9 years. So what he did during those 9 years, he actually majored for college in sports medicine, because he wanted to be able to have health and medical training, medical knowledge, so he can help the people with health and medicine and stuff like that. He was also a wilderness EMT. He also got training in linguistics, which, when you're dealing with the people that the language is unknown, you have to learn linguistics so you can pick up the language a lot faster and a lot easier and understand, so that you can communicate with them. And I guess that was what he was doing for the 9 years that he was preparing for this one mission. Now, she also said that he had went to the islands. There's a cluster of islands there, including the North Sentinel Island. But there's a cluster of islands called the Andaman Islands, and he went there 4 times prior to the actual trip to the North Sentinel Island. And that was to prepare, and to get information about the cultures and all that stuff, and kind of get ready for his, by researching and understanding things in that area, so that he can better acquaint himself with what he was getting into when he made contact with these people there. Now, it sounds like, with that information, that he actually did everything that he was supposed to do to prepare himself. The other thing is, he was a super outdoorsy kind of guy. Now, she said this, but then I also looked it up. He had an Instagram account, John A. Chau, is his handle. And I looked through his Instagram account, and I looked through 100 posts, over 100 posts. I mean, over 100 posts. And they were all outdoor stuff. He worked in California, in Northern California, I think Shasta County, Whiskey Town. He would do some, guiding, he was a mountain guide up there and all that. But all his posts were all outdoor photos of adventures he was doing, and always in the mountains and, rivers and all that stuff. So he was a full-on outdoor guy. And there wasn't much, Christian or faith related type posts. Like, I didn't see, it was all outdoor stuff. Now, all of the hundreds of posts that I actually looked through, there was about a handful of hashtags that had Soli Deo Gloria. Okay. To God alone the glory. And I think that's Latin. Anyways, there was about a handful of them of the hundreds and hundreds of photos posts that I looked through. So he didn't put too much out there on the Instagram, but you could tell. I mean, he was an outdoor guy. I mean, basically an outdoor guy. So he kind of knew his wilderness. He knew, obviously he was an EMT, and so he knew medical stuff. And so it sounds like he was really getting prepared for this mission to go to this island and evangelize and contact this tribe there, these people. And so what happened was, he arrived in the area, a couple days prior to his death. And what he did was he hired or got help from a couple of local fishermen there, to bring him to the actual island by boat. And I guess a couple days prior, they approached the island, and when he got too close, I guess he was attacked. The tribesmen, or the people on the island, the Sentinelese, actually were firing arrows at him, and one of the arrows actually hit the Bible he was holding, and it actually saved him from being hit. So it actually could have saved his life right there, but it hit the Bible and stuck into the Bible. And then, so he decided, okay, let's back out. And he retreated, right? And then that actually made him contemplate whether or not to go back, because he was fearful of his life. He was fearful of being killed. But during this contemplation of going back to the island during this time, he said he believed that God had called him to go to these people. And so he actually went back, and he went back 2 days later. And this time, though, he told the fishermen not to come with him. He went alone because of how dangerous it was. He didn't want anybody else to get hurt. And so he went alone, and he approached the island. And I guess this time that's when they killed him, I guess, sometime on that day, because again, the fishermen didn't go with him that day, so nobody kind of saw anything that happened. Well, the fishermen came back around the next day, and what they saw was, from the boat, they saw on the island the people, the tribe, actually burying a body, and it looked like John's body that they were burying. So sometime the day before he was killed, we don't know, how or what or whatever, or if he got to make contact with him, if he got to actually speak with him, but it appears he was killed that day. And even with the quotes, the audio quotes that you heard from his journal, he wrote that last portion just a few hours before he was killed. So he wrote that, and then he went, saying that, he was telling his friends and family, do not get mad at the people, don't get mad at God if he gets killed. And he was following his calling. So anyways, that's kind of the story of what happened here. Well, the thing is that, again, Christians and non-Christians alike criticized him for doing this and saying, hey, just leave the people alone. This was mostly the non-Christians here. Leave the people alone. You good riddance. You deserve what you got. You shouldn't have done it. And then, even Christians were criticizing the fact that he got, he said that they supposedly was illegal to even make contact and, hiring these fishermen and kind of going clandestine about it, making contact with these people. But I'm going to kind of look at it. I'm going to look at it in a different way. One of the things that I read, actually another hashtag John Chau. I looked up a hashtag John Chau on Instagram, and I found a post, and it says this. It says, "I like his way of evangelizing better than your way of not evangelizing." Because maybe there was some criticism on that. It was a podcast, and this person, contacted the podcast or whatever. And anyways, I like the way they said that. I like his way of evangelizing better than your way of not evangelizing. So, and then to bring it back to the Bible and to Jesus. Now, I'm gonna look at Mark here. When Mark writes about the crucifixion of Jesus, it says this in Mark 15, verses, I'd say 26 and through 30. Yeah, 26 through 30, somewhere around there. It says, this is again when he was getting crucified. "The written notice of the charge against him read, 'The King of the Jews.' They crucified 2 robbers with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, 'So, you who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, come down from the cross and save yourself.' In the same way, the chief priests and the teachers of the law mocked him among themselves. Quote, 'He saved others,' unquote, they said, 'but he can't save himself. Let this Christ, this King of Israel, come down now from the cross, that we may see and believe.' Those crucified with him also heaped insults on him." Okay, so that was from Mark chapter 15. Well, Matthew talks about it too, and Luke also talks about it. And the thing about that is, and the reason why I read that is because even Jesus was mocked when his mission was to die as well. Okay, he died for the gospel. It was the gospel. Jesus was living out the gospel, and his mission was to die. God had called him to that specific place, to those specific people, and then obviously it went out to all people and all nations, but he was called, and he answered the call, and Jesus was obedient to God, obedient to his calling. And even on the cross, while he was dying, he got criticized too. All right. John Chau gets criticized as well, right? From Christians and non-Christians. Same thing with Jesus. It immediately it made me think of that. When Jesus was on the cross, when he was being crucified and he was dying for his obedience to God, in his obedience to God, Jesus was also mocked by Christians and non-Christians alike. Or in that time, it would be followers of God, right? You got the Pharisees and all that, the religious leaders, right? And then you also have the non-believers who are mocking him as well. And so it just tells me that, we don't know what people's specific callings are. This guy, John Chau, it looked like he was called when he was 17 years old. He committed himself to Jesus, went on that mission when he went into Mexico, and he was 18. And from that point on, 9 years, he was preparing for this specific mission, to go to talk to these people, the North Sentinelese, the Sentinelese on the North Sentinel Island. And so how could we don't know what God's plan was for him. That's between him and God. But yet, I'm disappointed in Christians that mock him or that criticize him. You have no idea. You have no idea what God is doing in each other's lives, right? But we act like we have to, criticize, or we have to say something because we don't believe it. Well, that's us. It's not them. They are the ones that are called by God. They have the calling. So that's why it brought to my mind the scripture there in Matthew, Mark, and Luke about Jesus' crucifixion and how he was criticized as well. So let's stay away from the criticism and let's just honor this guy. All right? He was following his calling. He believed truly. You remember the quotes in the beginning of this episode. You heard those quotes. You heard how committed he was in his journal. We've got to honor him that he was obedient to his calling. He believed that was his calling and he went through with it, and he followed his calling and followed Jesus until death. Okay? And again, I'm going to read this quote. Last thing before we end it here. Quote, "I believe that the measure of success in the kingdom of God is obedience. I want my life to reflect obedience to Christ and to live in obedience to Him. I think Jesus is worth it. He is worth everything." Unquote. That's from John Chau. Thanks for joining me on the Liberty Podcast. I'm Clint Armitage. I want you to stay safe, stay motivated, and keep seeking liberty. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Liberty Podcast with Clint Armitage. If you want to get in touch, email us at info@clintarmitage.com.